The night was restless at Lagos General Hospital. In one delivery room, the atmosphere was different and heavier. Adana, a young woman in her late 20s, was about to become a mother for the very first time. Her husband, Chidi, said, "You're not alone, my love. We're in this together." Moments later, the sharp cries of a newborn broke through the air. The first baby had arrived, a healthy boy with shining brown skin. Chidi's eyes welled up with relief, but the second child wasn't far behind. Chidi exhaled, momentarily relieved. But his relief was short-lived. Moments later, the second twin arrived, just as strong, just as loud. Yet, as the midwife cleaned and wrapped them, a strange silence overtook the room. A heavy pause. Chidi's breath caught in his throat as he stared at his children. His heartbeat pounded in his ears. One child had dark skin like him, the other, fair-skinned, almost like an Oyinbo. Confusion clouded his face. "Mama Abini, what is this?" Before an answer could come, a more urgent terror gripped him. Adana's breathing faltered. Her eyelids fluttered. Panic surged in Chidi's chest. "Adana? Adana? Talk to me. Stay with me." His hands shook as he grabbed her. "Doctor, help her." The midwife and nurses scrambled, but Adana's life force was slipping. Her strength, already drained, faded with each shallow breath. Chidi felt his entire world shatter as she turned her eyes to him one last time, full of love and sorrow. "Take care of them. Promise me." And then, nothing. Her eyes closed, her body stilled. Chidi let out a strangled scream, gripping her lifeless body. The room became a blur of voices, movements, cries of the twins. But he heard none of it. He was drowning in a void of grief, unable to accept what had just happened. Hours later, Chidi sat motionless in the waiting room, his gaze empty. His mother, Mama Bisi, rushed in, breathless, her face etched with worry. "Chidi, where is Adana?" she demanded, but the look in his eyes gave her the answer before he spoke. She's gone. Mama, Adana is gone." Mama Bisi gasped, pressing a hand to her chest. Tears welled in her eyes, but she held herself together for her son. She wrapped her arms around him. "I'm so sorry, my son, but you must be strong. The children need you." The next day, Chidi found himself standing before the incubators, staring at the twins. One dark, one light. His heart, already heavy with grief, twisted in confusion. How could this be? Mama Bisi placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Chidi, these children need their father. Their color doesn't matter. They are part of Adana and part of you." Chidi nodded slowly, but uncertainty still gripped him. He loved Adana. He had never doubted her, but this was beyond his understanding. "Mama, I don't know if I can do this." That night, he sat at the kitchen table, staring at his untouched plate. The house was too quiet, except for the faint cries of the twins from the next room. Mama Bisi entered, her eyes filled with concern. "Chidi, you have to eat." He shook his head. "How can I? Mama, I don't even know if those children are mine." Mama Bisi sighed, taking his hand. "Life is full of mysteries we may never understand. But these children, they are yours. Chidi, if you must, take a test. But until then, do not turn your back on them." Chidi exhaled shakily. "I need time, Mama, just for a little while. Can you take care of them?" Her heart ached for him, but she nodded. "I will care for them, but do not take too long. They need their father." As Chidi left the house, he felt the walls closing in on him. His feet carried him aimlessly through the streets, his mind lost. Eventually, he found himself at a local bar. "Ah, Chidi, you day drink this early?" his friend, Ease, asked, sliding onto the stool beside him. Chidi's grip tightened around his glass. "I don't know what to do, Ease. Adana is dead, and I have 2 children, but I don't know if they are mine." He sighed deeply. "My brother, sorrow makes a man blind, but running won't change the truth. If you must know, find out, but don't let your grief make you do something you'll regret." Chidi stared into his drink, lost. The weight of his pain and confusion bore down on him. He had to find answers, but was he ready for the truth? Pedro looked at his friend seriously, his voice steady yet urgent. "Chidi, those children need their father. They need someone to love and take care of them. And you are that person. Take your time, but don't abandon them." Chidi nodded, feeling a bit more understood, but still lost in a whirlwind of emotions. "I'm going to try, but I need time. Thanks for being here." He returned home several hours later, his heart heavy, but his mind a little clearer. As he stepped into the living room, he saw Bisi gently rocking the twins, humming an old Yoruba lullaby. The babies had finally calmed, their small fingers curled around the edges of their blankets. Chidi stopped at the door, watching the scene in silence. "Mom, thank you for everything. I know you're doing more than I should ask of you," he said, his voice thick with gratitude and pain. Bisi looked at him with tender eyes. "They are my grandchildren. Chidi, there is no asking in love." Chidi stepped forward, hesitantly reaching for one of the twins. As he took the baby in his arms, something deep inside him stirred, an unspoken bond, an undeniable connection. He couldn't ignore it, even as the doubt still whispered in his mind. That night, while the twins slept in the next room, Chidi lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The weight of his emotions and unanswered questions pressed down on him, making sleep impossible. The next morning, Bisi sat in the rocking chair, holding one of the twins close to her chest. The baby gazed at her with big, curious eyes, his tiny hands reaching for her face. Bisi traced the child's soft features, her heart swelling with love. But no matter how much she adored them, the contrast between the two babies continued to baffle her. One had pale skin and light eyes, while his brother, still asleep in the crib, had deep-toned skin and dark eyes. "Shush, everything's okay, my love," Bisi whispered, stroking the baby's soft head. Despite her reassurances, her mind wandered to the rumors, the whispers that floated through the marketplace, the side glances from neighbors. Every time she stepped outside, she felt their eyes on her, their hushed conversations scraping against her ears like thorns. "Have you seen Chidi's twins? I don't know how to explain it, but one of them doesn't seem to be his," a woman muttered at the grocery store, her voice just loud enough for Bisi to hear. Bisi inhaled sharply, steeling herself against the judgment. She knew she had to be strong, not just for Chidi, but for the babies as well. Seeking comfort, she turned to her oldest friend, Marta, sitting in the kitchen over cups of steaming coffee. Bisi finally let her guard down. "Marta, I don't know what to do about all these rumors. People keep questioning Adana's fidelity, Chidi's paternity. They talk as if they know our family better than we do." Marta, a wise and warm-hearted woman, reached across the table and took Bisi's hand. "Friend, rumors are like harmattan dust. No matter how much you try to sweep them away, they will always find a way back. But you, more than anyone, knew Adana. She was a woman of honor. Genetics can be strange, but that doesn't change the fact that these babies are your grandchildren." Bisi nodded slowly, Marta's words soothing some of the turmoil within her. "I needed to hear that, but it's hard, especially when Chidi also has doubts." Marta sighed. "He's grieving. Bisi, losing Adana and then facing this mystery. It's a lot for any man. Give him time. For now, just keep loving those babies." Bisi returned home with renewed determination. She refused to let idle tongues shake her. She poured all her love into the twins, showering them with warmth and care. But despite her strength, a small seed of uncertainty lingered in her heart. The neighborhood where Bisi and Chidi lived was tight-knit, the kind where everyone knew everyone's business. News traveled fast, and the situation with the twins was no exception. Where once Chidi and his family were respected, now they were met with sidelong glances and hushed whispers. The weight of it all bore heavily on Chidi's shoulders. At the mechanic shop, Pedro watched Chidi struggle to focus. He tightened a bolt on an engine before setting down his tools. "Chidi, you need to pull yourself together. You can't keep going like this." Chidi sighed, running a hand through his unkempt hair. "I know, Pedro, but I can't stop thinking about everything. The twins, Adana, the rumors. It's all chaos." Pedro wiped his hands on a rag and placed a firm hand on Chidi's shoulder. "Listen, we're all here to help you, but you need to find a way to deal with this. Talk to someone. Seek answers if you need to, but don't let this destroy you." Chidi met his friend's gaze and nodded. "You're right, Pedro. I need to handle this." Meanwhile, back home, Bisi was growing weary. The twins needed constant care, and though she loved them deeply, the burden was beginning to take its toll. The constant visitors, the subtle and not so subtle remarks, it was all exhausting. One afternoon, while taking the twins to the park, Bisi encountered Maria, a longtime family friend. But even Maria, despite her familiarity, couldn't resist making a comment. "Bisi, how are you managing? It must be difficult, especially with, well, you know, the differences in the twins." Bisi stiffened, but forced a polite smile. "Maria, these children are my grandchildren. I love them, no matter what. That's all that matters." Maria shifted uncomfortably. "Of course, Bisi, you're right. Well, you know how people talk." Bisi's voice was firm. "Yes, I know. And I also know that my priority is these children, not gossip." That night, Chidi returned home, weary and overwhelmed. Bisi was waiting for him in the kitchen, her expression serious. She set a cup of coffee in front of him and sat down across the table. "Chidi, we need to talk." He rubbed his temples. "What now, Mom? The rumors aren't going away. If you have doubts, let's face them. Talk to a doctor. Do the tests. But don't let this consume you. Your children need you." Chidi stared into his coffee, his mother's words sinking in. After a long pause, he exhaled and nodded. "I'll do the tests, Mom. But until then, I need to focus on them and on the shop." Bisi reached out, squeezing his hand. "That's all we can do, Chidi. One day at a time." The days ahead would be long, and the answers they sought might not bring the peace they hoped for. But for now, they would face the journey together, with love as their guiding light. Chidi and Bisi slowly began to find a rhythm. Though the weight of uncertainty still hung over them, they pressed forward. The DNA test was in progress, but until the results came, Chidi was determined to be present for his children. At the shop, Pedro and the other workers supported him, covering for him when he needed time with his family. The neighborhood, once a hotbed of gossip, had begun to shift. The whispers had not disappeared entirely, but some people were now offering quiet support. Marta, Beese's longtime friend, decided to take action. She organized a gathering in the heart of the community, a place where disputes were settled and matters of importance discussed. Standing before the assembled neighbors, she raised her voice. We have all seen hardship. We have all faced struggles. But what defines us is how we respond. Beese and Chidi do not need whispers behind their backs. They need support, Marta declared, her voice strong and unwavering. Her words found their mark. Some neighbors nodded, their expression shifting from suspicion to understanding. Yet, despite the gradual change, Chidi remained trapped in an endless cycle of pain. Every passing day, the doubts over his children's paternity clashed with the unbearable grief of losing Adana. One evening, as he sat at the kitchen table, staring at a cup of coffee that had long since gone cold, he felt the weight of his torment pressing down on him. When he returned from the workshop, he found Beese in the living room, rocking the twins to sleep. He stopped at the door, watching them. They were his children, weren't they? And yet, the doubt refused to leave him. Mom, Chidi finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. I can't go on like this. I need to leave. I need time to think. Beese turned to him, concern etched deep into her face. Chidi, you can't just leave. Your children need you now more than ever. He shook his head, torn between guilt and desperation. I can't do this, Mom. Not with so many doubts. Not with all this pain. I'm no good for them like this. Beese sighed, seeing the battle raging within her son. She knew she couldn't force him to stay. What are you planning to do? She asked softly. Chidi looked away before answering. I'll go to grandfather's old house in the distant city. I need space. I need silence. Beese closed her eyes for a moment, then exhaled slowly. If this is what you need, I won't stop you. But promise me you'll come back. These children need their father. Chidi swallowed hard and nodded. I'll come back. Mom, I just need time. Thank you for everything. That very night, he packed a small bag, kissed his sleeping children on the forehead, and left. The road was long, winding through villages and forests, until he finally reached his destination, his grandfather's abandoned house. The place was frozen in time, untouched by years yet filled with memories. He settled into a room that was still in decent condition, hoping that distance would bring clarity, but solitude did not heal him. Instead, it became his prison. The pain grew heavier, the silence unbearable. Night after night, he sat on the creaking wooden porch, drowning himself in bottle after bottle of cheap liquor, searching for answers in the bottom of each glass. Yet, none came. Instead, the memories of Adana haunted him, with her laughter, her warmth, their dreams of building a life together. One night, as he stared into the darkness, he spoke into the void. Do you remember, Adana, the day we met? You were picking flowers for your university project, and I was fixing a bicycle. I knew, in that moment, that you were special. He chuckled bitterly, running a hand over his weary face. We had so many plans. We were supposed to grow old together, but instead, I'm here. And I don't even know if our children are truly mine. A sudden creak at the door made him turn sharply. Through the dim light, he saw a familiar figure. Pedro, his friend and co-worker, stood in the doorway, his expression a mixture of frustration and concern. Chidi, I can't stand by and watch you destroy yourself, Pedro said, stepping inside. This isn't you. Chidi scoffed, rubbing his temples. You don't understand, Pedro. Every time I think about Adana, I feel crushed by guilt. And then there's the doubt about the twins. What if they're not mine? Pedro pulled up a chair and sat across from him. Listen to me, Chidi. Adana was a strong woman. She was faithful. She loved you. You know that. If you need proof, then fine, get the DNA test. But you can't keep running. Chidi clenched his fists, his breath shaky. What if I can't handle the truth? Pedro met his gaze with unwavering determination. Then we'll face it together. But this? He gestured to the empty bottles littering the floor. This isn't the man Adana loved. And it's not the father your children need. For the first time in a long while, something in Chidi shifted. A small ember of hope flickered within him. Slowly, he nodded. You're right. I need to stop running. I need to know the truth. Pedro exhaled, relieved. Good. I'll help you do whatever it takes. The decision was made. The next morning, Chidi and Pedro arranged an appointment for the DNA test. Fear clawed at him, but so did a sense of relief. At last, he was ready to face the truth. That night, after Pedro left, Chidi sat alone in the house. But this time, it was different. He picked up a worn photograph of Adana and the twins, tracing his fingers over the image. I'm sorry, Adana, he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. But I promise, I'm going to make things right. For you, and for our children. The tears came again, but this time, they were different. They weren't just for sorrow, they were for resolution. The DNA test was set. In 2 weeks, He would finally have the answers that had tormented him for so long. But no matter what the results revealed, one thing was certain: he was done running. Chidi was determined to return home and face the truth. A storm of emotions churned within him: nervousness, determination, fear, and a longing for clarity. As he climbed to the attic in search of a suitcase, he felt as if he were ascending into the forgotten corners of his own past. Dust swirled in the dim light, and the wooden beams groaned under his weight, as though whispering old secrets long buried. He scanned the attic, his eyes landing on an old, worn suitcase resting in the farthest corner. It was coated in dust, untouched for decades, yet something about it seemed to call to him. Chidi approached slowly, brushing away cobwebs with his sleeve. When he lifted it, he was surprised. It was far heavier than it looked. A sense of curiosity stirred within him, replacing his hesitation. What could be inside? The lock was rusted shut, resisting his attempts to pry it open with his bare hands. Determined, he searched through the attic and found a small crowbar. With careful effort and a few forceful strikes, the lock finally gave way with a loud snap. Chidi hesitated, inhaling sharply before he flipped the suitcase open. What he found inside left him breathless. Letters, photographs, and a small wooden chest lay within. The scent of aged paper and time-worn ink filled the air as he carefully lifted the items. His hands trembled as he sifted through the photographs first. The images were faded, yet clear enough to recognize the faces captured in time. His grandfather, as a young man, stood beside a white woman and a black man, figures he had never seen before. Chidi frowned. He had never known much about his great-grandparents. His grandfather had always been quiet about his lineage, only offering vague mentions of good people when asked. Heart pounding, Chidi sat on the attic floor, spreading the photos before him like puzzle pieces waiting to be solved. He picked up a brittle, yellowed letter and carefully unfolded it. The handwriting was elegant, yet firm, carrying the weight of unspoken struggles. Dear Helena, these times are hard, but your love gives me the strength to carry on. Our children must know that our love overcame all barriers, and that family is the most important thing. Chidi's throat tightened. He read another letter, then another. Each one painted a vivid picture of a love that had defied the world's cruel expectations. His great-grandparents had fought for their love, their dignity, and their right to be together. It was a history hidden in silence, yet now, through these letters, it demanded to be known. His fingers trembled as he reached for the small wooden chest. Inside, he found more photographs, a pocket watch with initials carved into the back, and a delicate pendant. He traced the cool metal of the pendant with his thumb, feeling an inexplicable connection to the people who had worn it before him. They had faced trials, whispers, and judgment, just as he had. A wave of realization washed over him. Could this be a sign? Had he been blind to the deeper roots of his own story? The uncertainty about his children's paternity had been eating away at him, but these letters reminded him of something greater. Family wasn't just about blood, it was about love, sacrifice, and resilience. With newfound purpose, Chidi carefully gathered the letters and photographs, placing them back into the suitcase as if handling sacred relics. He climbed down from the attic and, without hesitation, picked up his phone. Mom, I found something in Grandpa's attic, he said, his voice shaking with the weight of revelation. Letters, photos, our great-grandparents. They were an interracial couple. Did you know? There was silence on the line before Beese's voice finally came through, low and uncertain. Chidi, I don't know what to say. Grandpa was always reserved about his past. He made a promise never to speak of it, to protect us. But Mom, Chidi pressed, this changes everything. We have a history we never knew. I need to understand it, especially now. A sigh crackled through the phone, heavy with emotions unspoken. I know, son, I know. We'll talk about this when you come home. But please, Chidi, come back soon. Your children need you. Chidi closed his eyes, nodding as though she could see him. I will, Mom. I promise. That night, he sat with the letters spread before him, reading the words of the past. He let himself absorb the love story of his great-grandparents, their forbidden love, their struggles, their triumphs. As the candle flickered beside him, he whispered to himself, this is where I come from, and it's time I stop running. The next day, with a suitcase full of memories and revelations, Chidi set off on the long road back home. His heart was heavy with emotions, anticipation, fear, and an odd sense of hope. As he drove past familiar landscapes, thoughts swirled in his mind. How would he share these discoveries with his mother? Would this change how he viewed his own children? One thing was certain, the past could no longer be buried. It was time to face it and build a future free of doubt. When Chidi arrived home, Beesie was already waiting. The moment she saw him, she rushed forward, wrapping him in a strong embrace. We missed you so much. Chidi, she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. I missed you too, Mom. And I have so much to tell you. His voice was thick with emotions he struggled to contain. They moved to the living room, where Chidi placed the suitcase on the table and slowly began taking out the old photographs and letters. Beesie reached for them with shaking hands, her eyes scanning each image with a mix of disbelief and longing. I can't believe Grandpa never told us this, she said, her voice breaking. All these years, and we never knew. Maybe he thought he was protecting us, Chidi murmured, trying to make sense of it himself. After a long conversation, Chidi knew he had one more step to take. His heart pounded as he climbed the stairs to the twins' room. It had been a long and painful journey to reach this moment. As he slowly opened the door, he saw them awake in their cribs, their tiny hands waving in the air, their laughter filling the space with innocence and warmth. Both children turned to look at him, their eyes big and curious. He took slow steps forward, observing them closely. How had he been so blind before? Now, he saw everything, the way they smiled, so much like Adana, the little gestures that mirrored her own. He knelt beside them, feeling overwhelmed by a wave of emotions. One of the twins reached out a tiny hand toward him. "Hello, little ones," Chidi said softly, his voice unsteady. "I'm Daddy." The lighter-skinned twin let out a joyful babble, a bright smile spreading across his face. The darker-skinned twin stared at Chidi with a mixture of curiosity and shyness. Then Chidi noticed it, a tiny mole on the second twin's neck, exactly where he had one too. "It's incredible," he murmured, his voice thick with emotion. "You're part of me, part of Adana." The following days were crucial. Chidi and Bisi took the twins to the hospital for a DNA test. The wait was agonizing, each second stretching into an eternity. He knew he needed to know the truth, to move forward, to embrace his children fully. A week later, the call came. With trembling hands, he picked up the phone. "Hello, Mr. Chidi," said the voice on the other end. "We have the results of the DNA test. The twins are your biological children." A sharp breath left Chidi's lungs, his chest tightening with a mix of relief and regret. How much time had he wasted in doubt, in pain? He hung up the phone, standing in silence, letting the weight of the truth settle over him. Then, without hesitation, he rushed to the twins' room. Bisi was sitting on the floor, playing with them. She looked up as he entered, his expression unreadable. "They're mine," Chidi said, his voice breaking. "They're my children." Bisi smiled through her own tears, nodding. "I always knew it, Chidi. Now it's time for you to be the father they need." And so, Chidi stayed. He moved back in with Bisi, determined to make up for the lost time. Day by day, he learned his children's laughter, their cries, their little quirks. The twins, though hesitant at first, began to accept him. They reached for him, giggled at his funny faces, babbled at him as if they had always known he belonged. A few days later, Chidi knew there was one last thing he had to do. He had to see Adana. On a bright, clear morning, he carried one of the twins, while Bisi held the other as they walked toward the cemetery. The weight of the moment pressed down on him, but he didn't stop. When they reached Adana's grave, he knelt, placing a gentle hand on the cold stone. "Adana," he whispered, his voice thick with sorrow and love. "We are here." He took a deep breath. "I wanted you to meet our children. They are beautiful, and I promise I will take care of them. I will honor your memory and be the father they deserve." Tears rolled down his cheeks as he watched the twins play with the flowers by the grave. Bisi placed a comforting hand on his shoulder, offering silent support. Chidi exhaled, long and deep. "I miss you every day, Adana, but I promise, the children will know who you were. They will know how much you loved them." The breeze carried his words into the air, as if delivering them to Adana's spirit. For the first time in a long while, Chidi felt a sense of peace. They returned home, and he continued dedicating himself to his children. Each day was a lesson, a challenge, but also an opportunity to strengthen the bond he had almost lost. Laughter filled the house. The weight of the past began to lift, replaced by the warmth of love and new beginnings. The years passed quickly. The twins, now 6 years old, were ready to start school. Chidi and Bisi had worked hard to give them a stable, loving home, but they knew the real challenges were only just beginning. The first week of school was not easy. Despite their excitement, the twins faced curious stares and whispered questions from classmates who didn't understand why two brothers could look so different. At recess, a boy approached them, his face scrunched in confusion. "Why do you look so different from your brother?" he asked, his tone carrying the sharp edge of suspicion. The lighter-skinned twin, Diego, glanced at his brother Daniel before turning back to the boy. He straightened his small shoulders and, with a confidence far beyond his years, answered, "Because we're special. We're brothers, and that's all that matters." Chidi watched from a distance, his heart swelling with pride. His children had a strength he had once doubted in himself. They knew who they were, and they stood firm in it. The past had tested him, but the future was his to shape. He was no longer a man lost in doubt. He was a father, a protector, and a storyteller of a legacy that would never be forgotten. "They are mine." Chidi's voice trembled as he spoke, his eyes brimming with tears. He stood frozen, watching Bisi play with the children, or their children. His heart pounded in his chest, the realization crashing over him like a wave. After all the doubt, all the pain, there was no denying it anymore. "They're my children," he whispered again, his voice barely above a breath. Bisi turned to him, tears of her own glistening in her eyes. But these were not tears of sorrow. They were tears of joy, of relief. "I always knew it, Chidi," she said softly. "Now, it's time for you to be the father they need." Chidi swallowed hard. He had spent so long running from the truth, drowning in uncertainty. But here they were, his children, two little souls who needed him. He wouldn't fail them. Not anymore. Determined, Chidi moved back in with Bisi, embracing fatherhood with an unwavering resolve. Every day, he spent hours playing with the twins, learning their quirks, memorizing their laughter.